Today, we're going to present about the primary exports, industrialization, and structural transformation in China and the Philippines.
According to Merriam-Webster, export is to carry or send as a commodity to some other place as another country. First, let's look at the Philippines. In recent years, the gap between actual and target exports is driven by exported goods. Services exports have exceeded their target since 2011, but this was not enough to balance out the weak performance of goods, which accounts for 72% of the total exports of the Philippines. By any measure, the Philippines has been falling behind its neighbors in export performance. Between 2006 and 2012, Philippine exports grew more slowly at 5.2% annually. Philippine merchandise exports hit a record high of 53.98 billion US dollars in 2013. This turnaround contributed to the higher growth rate of the economy. The key markets for both exports and imports are Japan, China, USA, Singapore, and Korea. The top overall export in terms of highest dollar value at the end of 2015 is electronic gadgets at $28.91 billion, which is already 49.3% of the total exports. The Philippines has a positive value in net exports in the international trade of semiconductors, integrated circuits, insulated wires, electronic transformers, and static converters. In turn, this indicates the Philippines' strong competitive edge under the electronics category. Underlying the inability of Philippine exports to keep pace with global trends is a host of domestic problems, which include unnecessary and trade-impeding domestic regulations and government policies, high costs and deficient infrastructures, limited availability of export financing, especially for micro, small, and medium enterprises, unstable supply of raw materials, shortage of domestic skills matching industry requirements, weak system of innovation in products and processes, and fragmented and poorly funded domestic institutions promoting product quality and standards. These problems have hindered the competitiveness of Philippine exports and capacity of local producers to be able to keep at par with the global production network. Next, we have industrialization. Industrialization is the process in which a society or country or world transforms itself from a primarily agricultural society into one based on the manufacturing of goods and services. Individual manual labor is often replaced by mechanized mass production, and craftsmen are replaced by assembly lines. The Philippines and its industrial sector had much potential in the past as they were considered as early leaders in East Asia. However, it has not been able to live up to initial expectations. A sophisticated manufacturing sector and the prospect of export-oriented industrialization started to bloom in the 1950s and 1960s. But for the past 30 years, Philippine performance has been underperforming. Manufacturing output has grown at a very slow rate. Little structural change took place. Export has concentrated on one product group, and export growth has also been poor. In 1979, President Ferdinand Marcos placed 11 industrial development projects on the economic policy agenda, projects that were focused on shifting the country's industrial structure from consumer and intermediate goods toward basic heavy industry. The projects included an integrated steel mill, petrochemical complex, pulp and paper plant, coconut industry, copper smelter, aluminum smelter, phosphatic fertilizer plant, cement industry expansion, diesel engine manufacturing, a nuclear power plant, and alcohol gas development. Under the administration of Corazon Aquino, Republic Act No. 7368, also known as Countrywide Industrialization Act of 1992, was approved. Now let's go to initial structural transformation. Structural transformation refers to the reallocation of economic activity across the broad sectors agriculture, manufacturing, and services. For the Philippines, there has been a lack of structural modification within manufacturing. Food processing, beverages, and tobacco contribute most to the sector, with 50% of value added and 22 to 25% of employment. The output shares of labor intensive and heavy industry are similar. The share of labor intensive industries did not increase in spite of liberalizing reforms in the 1980s. Almost all of the gradual expansion in the output share of labor intensive industries since the 1980s is accounted for by electronics. It has been performing well and is now the third largest employer. Garments, footwear, and a diverse range of export oriented labor intensive industries have also performed well. This is in contrast to the declining output and employment of the industries of textile, wood products, metal goods, and machinery. Meanwhile, the heavy industry sector has been unable to adjust the new, less protected environment.
Now, let's take a look at the primary export of China. China is the largest export economy in the world. In 2013, China exported a total of 2.25 trillion US dollars. Exports accounted for about 13.3% of total Chinese economic output, having many competitive advantages like low labor costs and rich resources has made China the world's number one exporter. China's main export partners are the United States, Hong Kong, the European Union, which is Germany, the UK, and the Netherlands. ASEAN countries like Vietnam, Japan, South Korea, and India. Exports from China during 2014 amounted to 2.34 trillion US dollars, up 48.5% since 2010. China's top 10 exports accounted for 66.9% of the overall value of its global shipments. It should come as no surprise that the highest value of Chinese export products in 2014 are led by technology-related goods, from advanced telecommunications equipment to components of computer devices. The top overall export in terms of highest dollar value is their electronic gadgets, at 570.9 billion, which is 24.4% of their total exports in the year 2014. The highest contributor to this is their phone system appliances at 195.3 billion US dollars. Despite the advancement, exports in China dropped by 25.4% year on year to 126.15 billion US dollars in February of 2016, following an 11.2% fall in a month earlier and missing market expectation of a 12.5% decline. It is the sharpest drop since May 2009, mainly due to weak global demand and a business shutdown during the Lunar New Year holiday. Let's move on to the industrialization in China. Chinese industry has been developing rapidly over the past 60 years, especially during the past 30 years, transforming the country from a backward nation to an economic power. From a poverty-stricken land to a country with the world's largest accumulation of foreign exchange reserves, and from a country subjected to the forces of international free trade to a country able to actively implement and protect the free trade principles. From 1949 to 1978, China, for the first time, systematically built its industrial base and made its shift from an agricultural economy to an industrial one. The period 1949 and 1956 was referred to as the golden period of Chinese industrialization. The country was able to establish its primary industries, including steel, automobile, textile, chemical, and defense during these years. Furthermore, the GDP grew annually at the rate of over 20% because of this. Between 1978 and 2003, the Chinese economy experienced a real annual rate of total GDP growth of 8.4%, a performance that made China the most rapidly growing economy in the world during this period. Labor productivity grew during this period at a remarkable 5.7% per year. At the same time, there has been a sharp transformation of the Chinese economy as millions of workers left the agricultural sector for the industrial sector, causing a decrease in the share of workers in agriculture from over 70% of all workers in 1978 to under 50% in 2003. The initial structural transformation of China. The Chinese economy is divided into three broad sectors: agriculture, industry, and services. They are also known as primary, secondary, and tertiary, respectively. Primary refers to agriculture, forestry, animal husbandry, and fishery. Secondary refers to mining and quarrying, manufacturing, production, and supply of electricity, water, and gas. Tertiary refers to all other economic activities not included in primary or secondary industry. The most noticeable feature of the structural transformation of the Chinese economy is seen from the shifts in pattern of employment. Based on the employment data of China from 1978 to 2005, agricultural employment share falls rapidly in the early stages of economic reforms, at low levels of income, giving rise to a rapid increase in the share of non-agricultural sector in total employment. The employment share of the service sector climbs from 12.2% in 1978 to 31.3% in 2005. The employment share of the industrial sector does not rise as fast as that of the service sector during this period of 1978 to 2005. The primary sector's share of GDP declines from 27.9% in 1978 to 12.6% in 2005. On the other hand, GDP share of the tertiary sector increases from 24.2% in 1978 to 39.9% in 2005. The secondary sector dominates the production structure, with the average share of this sector in total GDP is 45.3% over the sample period.
So how is the furniture industry faring in both the Philippines and in China? First, in the Philippines, the Philippine economic growth has raised most of its sectors, one of which is the ever-growing furniture industry. With real estate developments popping up around the country, there has also been an increase in proliferation and promotion of Filipino-made products both locally and globally. The Philippine furniture industry aims to be the global design innovator or hub for products using sustainable materials by 2030, with thriving domestic and international markets and a competitive and motivated labor force. The Philippines is known as the Milan of Asia. The industry, which is 98% categorized under SMEs, provide 2.1 million indirect workers nationwide and provides business to 5.4 million in its supply chain. Philippine furniture is made using the finest sustainably sourced raw materials such as hardwood, buri, rattan, bamboo, metal, and other indigenous products. The wood, box beds, and mattresses, office and store fixtures, and plastic furniture subsectors are domestically oriented, while the rattan and metal subsectors are export oriented. 95% of furniture companies in the country are classified as SMEs, and the three major furniture production areas in the country are in Metro Manila, Pampanga, and Cebu. From January to August of 2014, total exports reached a total of 40.7 billion US dollars, as merchandise exports for the first 8 months are up by 9.2%, and non-electronic exports, like furniture and fixtures exports, grew by 44.1% compared to the same period in the year of 2013. The industry, however, has also faced several stumbling blocks that have hindered its growth. One of the issues that affected the sector is the congestion in Manila ports, which handicapped delivery of products around the country. The port congestion also raised costs of trucking services. The disruption in electricity also affected local production. In the year 2015, the local furniture industry is projected a 25% growth in revenues for that year, citing demand from the domestic market as well as recovery in key export markets.
China's furniture industry. The Chinese furniture industry has experienced a rapid development. Five furniture zones has formed, namely Pearl River Delta Furniture Zone, Yangtze River Delta Furniture Zone, Bohai Sea Surrounding Area, Northeast Zone, and the West Zone. China's furniture products have an important position in the world market. In 2010, the furniture exports accounted for 27% of the world's total exports, with wood furniture accounting for 10.6 billion US dollars worth of exports, or 58% of China's total exports of furniture. Among the main export markets, the United States accounted for 39% of China's total exports. In terms of international furniture trade, an important mutual influence exists between China and the United States. After more than 20 years of rapid growth in its furniture industry, China has now become the world's largest furniture production base and exporter. According to information released by China National Furniture Association, among all regions in China, the Pearl River Delta has the highest concentration of furniture industry with the highest production output and strongest integrated support capability. Furniture production enterprises in China are much less concentrated than in other industries, and it is estimated that 80% of them are small and medium-sized. China became the largest furniture exporter in the world in 2004, surpassing Italy. Wood furniture manufacturing made up the largest proportion of the Chinese furniture manufacturing sector in 2012, contributing about 59% of the total furniture manufacturing revenue. In 2014, profit in the sector was 44.18 billion RMB, an increase of 12.5% compared with 2013. In 2014, furniture export value reached 53.41 billion US dollars, an increase of 0.61% compared with 2013. It is very evident that the furniture industry has been a big contributor to the economy of both the Philippines and China. Furthermore, both countries already have the presence of large-scale furniture companies. China has already grown to be the largest furniture exporter in the world, but the Philippines has been growing in the furniture industry for their creativity and the use of raw and indigenous materials. For the Philippines to further develop, we must first solve the problem of congestion in Manila ports to allow easier transportation of exports.